everybody, and welcome back to a brand new build video with me, Sherman. And this is an Elder Scrolls Online build video, just so you guys know, because I did this before and somebody was like, what is this game? What is this for? So it is for Elder Scrolls Online. And this is the Lord Knight build, guys. This is a solo play build made for solo play. It's exactly what it's made for. Now, you can play this in group content. You can play this in you know, dungeons. You can play this in vet dungeons and stuff like that. It is soloable through pretty much most of the Path 1 dungeons and the Path 2 dungeons, as long as there's no group dynamics in it. Like, doesn't require 2 people to open switches or 2 people to do certain things like the chains in Fungal Grotto 2. Dire Frost Keep, where you're going to push the 2 switch buttons, things like that. Like, you can't solo those dungeons with this build. Now, a lot of those dungeons, when you become accustomed with the playstyle of this build, you can pretty much solo most of them on Path 1. The Path 2 dungeons can be soloed too. Like I said, some of them can be. And then when it comes to DLC dungeons, when you become really good with this build, then you can start soloing some of them as well on solo, or on normal. When it comes to vet mode, though, mostly it's going to be the Path 1 dungeons that you could solo on normal. You'll be able to solo most of them, but not all of them. And then the same thing goes with DLC, or the Path 2 dungeon. There will be a few in there you can solo. Like, I've soloed COS. That's not a problem. Like, a lot of people have a problem, City of Ash. A lot of people have problems soloing City of Ash 2 because of the mechanics. It's not so bad when you become good at it. You can solo it even on vet mode. Like, it's just a really long, drawn-out dungeon. But you can solo it even on normal mode, or normal and vet mode. But honestly, I'm not going to show you guys me soloing it on vet mode because it takes like almost 3 hours to do. And I'm not going to make a 3-hour-long video. Even if I sped it up, I wouldn't do it. It's just not worth the effort. But it is a really cool, fun dungeon to solo if you want to take the time to do it. I've only soloed it like 3 times with this build, and that was back before I made changes to the build. So now that I've made changes, it might be a little different. It still works the same, but it might be a little different. Alright, so moving on down the road. There is a lot of things you can solo. You can solo world bosses, you can solo delves, public dungeons, and a lot of people are looking for builds that they can just solo content with because they want to make gold. They want to, you know, farm items to sell. This is the kind of build that you want for that. Because playing a DPS character and soloing public dungeons is no problem. But soloing world bosses, soloing public dungeons, soloing delves, soloing normal dungeons and stuff like that, it's just, to some people, it's a lot of fun. So that's why I'm releasing these 5 solo builds. So let's get into this one. This is Wood Elf Templar. Now, Wood Elf is the best option, and that's because of their recovery rate. Now, Khajiit is second best for this build, but Khajiits get no stamina, max stam, or no max health. So it's you're going to have a lot different readout on them than you will with a Wood Elf, because Wood Elves get 6% max stam. They get no health bonus. But Khajiits do get higher crit chance, so that kind of plays into it, and it helps. The next one that I would choose is Redguard for this, but Redguard is, it's good on resource management, but nowhere near what a Wood Elf can get in recovery. And that makes it, like, sustain-wise, people say, oh, the Redguard's better. It's not. Not with this build. Redguard's actually the third choice. Now, you can play a Nord with it, you can play you can play any race with it. The main reason why I choose Wood Elf is because of the recovery. The build works really good with that high recovery. Now, you're going to notice that the health has gone down in this build to 25k from 30 before, and that's because we're no longer running Plague Doctors with it. We are running 3 Endurance with it, and I'll get to that in a minute. Weapon damage is really good still. The crit is really good still, and then you'll notice the resistances are a little bit lower than what they were before, but don't stress it. You kind of make up for that with other things. your damage shield will be affected by your lower health. Now, you can go back to the old Plague Doctor and Kvetch's Gladiator combo, but you're going to lose the monster set benefit. And this monster set benefit is important to this build. So, now that you've seen the stats, let's move down here. We are running the Lady Mundustone for extra resistances. It's kind of important. So, make sure you have this. Major Savagery from Expert Hunter, Minor Intellect, Minor Fortitude, Minor Endurance. We are running Repentance on the main bar for those greater amounts, but it's not really needed, depending on how you're playing. Next up, we are running Dubious Cameron Throne for the max stam, max health, and the max stam recovery. This is like essential to this build, and I'll get to that in a second. Now, it is a little bit better to go with more stam recovery for this build, and honestly, even switching out the damage shield's a little bit more important, but you're going to lose something that you need. So that's why we don't want to trade that off. That's why we keep this setup the way it is. So, moving on to the gear, we are running on this build a 2-piece Silitrix for the AoE effect and the extra stamina. So this thing, when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create an earthquake under the enemy that erupts after 1.5 seconds, dealing 6,790 damage to all enemies within 4 meters and stunning them for 3 seconds. This effect can occur once every 5.5 seconds. This thing has a low cooldown, like the lowest cooldown of all. And it has a 1.5 second activation. So actually, when it activates, it'll fire off, and then you have 4 seconds before it has a chance to fire off again. This thing can stay active quite a bit, even at a 10% chance. So just remember that. Now, we are running tri-stats here. You can run tri-stats in the chest and the legs if you want, and then just compensate with your attributes to get equivalent to this, which is almost a better idea, but it's kind of not, because having the higher stamina helps. Now, the next set we're running is the Kvetch's Gladiator. Now, a lot of people don't like this set, and I can understand why, but I want to point out the advantage of this set with this build. Templars get 6% weapon damage. I am using a Master Sword to increase my damage by 5%. Now, I'm using a two-handed sword for that 5% extra damage. When the boss or the enemy drops below 25% health, my heavy attacks hit upwards to 28k. That's why I do it. That's the main reason, is because on a Templar, Kvetch's Gladiator is Beast. On a Nightblade, it's Beast as well, but nowhere near as much as a Templar. And it's the truth. So that's why I chose Kvetch's Gladiators over the other ones. Now, because it's a solo build, you're not building for penetration, max penetration. You are building for max damage output. That's it. And since you're running a tanky build because of survivability, because see, you need max damage output, survivability, and resource management to make this build work really good. So we are running 5 heavy. Now, the 3 bigger pieces, the helm, the chest, and the legs, are infused. The shoulders and the boots are reinforced, and the belt and the gauntlets are Nirnhoned. These give you the best resistance results, period. Now, I am running a medium helm with a light belt. Now, I've done the combination change to where I'm running a medium gauntlet with a heavy helm, and the results are the same almost in resistances. So I like this combination better. It's just preference. So light helm, light belt, medium helm, everything else heavy, and reinforced shoulders, reinforced boots, Nirnhoned waist and or belt and gloves. All right, going over the jewelry. The next set we are running is 3 pieces of endurance. I mentioned this earlier, with 2 weapon damage and 1 magic recovery. Now, why the 1 magic recovery, you wonder? Because we are running a magic damage shield, and we are running another thing that we apply for that costs magicka. So we need that greater magic recovery so we can keep consistency of those things applied. Now, a lot of the times you're going to be utilizing this damage shield more than you imagine. So you might want to think about maybe switching it out. Now I'll show you how you can do that in a second. So now next up we are running on a two-handed master sword. Now these builds that I'm releasing, my solo builds, are the only ones I'm releasing this update that run master and Maelstrom stuff or Asylum. And the reason why is because these are solo builds. They need the best things they can get. So this is literally the best weapon you can use for two-handed is a master weapon. Maelstrom is blah. Asylum is good, but if you're going for Ultimate Gen, which we're not, we're building for damage output. This gives you the greater damage output because you are using the cleave skill. Now, because you're using the cleave skill, you're going to get 1500 extra damage per enemy hit within a cone. So for each enemy hit, and it says increases the damage cleave deals by 1500 for each enemy in its cone, up to a maximum of 9,000, which is a total of 6 enemies. So if you hit 6 enemies, that main enemy you hit that you have targeted is going to take 9,000 extra damage. Now, because you don't have high penetration, he's not going to take quite that much, but it still helps out with your damage output. Moving on to, and we are running a Crusher enchant to give us some penetration access. So, just pointing that out. Now, moving on to the bow, we are running a Maelstrom bow. Now, you can run a Master bow and be fine, but Master's a lot easier to get than Maelstrom. I'm not going to lie. But you have to run the Master or Dragon Star Arena like a million times to get a good two-handed sword and to get the bow. So, but the bow will work. A Master bow does work. But with this one, I went Maelstrom because it does offer the greater damage output. Now, I did mention in another video, some of these builds can be used to solo Maelstrom Arena. This one can if you know it well enough. It can solo Maelstrom Arena. So you can get this bow. But I would probably suggest getting a Master bow first before I did that. Now, if you don't have access to a Master and Maelstrom bow or two-handed sword, it's fine. You can craft them, a two-handed sword and bow, and be fine for now until you can get them. Alright, but Maelstrom's really good because of the damage output it does. So Maelstrom's better, Master's okay. Alright, so moving on to skills. So with the skills, unlock all the class passives, guys. It's really important. Just unlock all the class passives. Now, I'm going to show you guys a little secret here that you can do if you want, but you have to be very, very careful with this playstyle. You can swap out this Expert Hunter, only this one, for biting jabs. Now, this does give you greater damage output and greater damage potential. But the way I would set it up is like this, because you're going to want to focus Brawler first, biting jabs, this, with heavy attacks in between, then fire Rally off again, and then heavy attack, and then swap bars. The reason why you're going to want a heavy attack in between all these is because of the benefits. Now, why are you using 2 of these? Because you're actually going to take this off and grab the Undaunted Bone Shield, because that's going to be a stamina output. Now, I'm just going to show you guys real quick on these foxes over here, these jackals, how this works. So, pop Rally, Brawler, biting jabs, and then heavy attack right afterwards. So you can keep, because you want Brawler to keep your damage shield up, and you want biting jabs to give you that crit. But you're not wanting to keep that crit up 100%, just when you're on that bar. Now, when you swap bars, you still have Expert Hunter on the back bar, which is up all the time, which is going to help you with your critical chance on the back bar. On the front bar, you're only going to have it when you activate this. So you're going to have to use this a lot. And that kind of sucks. So that's why I don't use this this setup. I actually use the one I normally run. So alright, so just make sure you get all your class passives. When it comes to weapon passives, make sure you get all the two-handed weapon passives and the bow passives. On armor passives, light, you are wearing a 5-1-1 setup, so get all 3 of these. Medium, these top 2, the bottom one, and then with heavy armor, all of these. World skills, it doesn't matter, just get these 2. You can also, if you guys are wondering, I've been asked this, can you be a werewolf or a vampire? Yes, you can. I would not suggest the werewolf because that's a little bit more on the, like, hey, I'm a werewolf now. It can make things a little bit more complicated. Vampire is fine because of the stamina recovery and magic recovery really do play into this. And being a wood elf, you still have to deal with the fire mitigation, but you won't really notice it with all the healing you got going on. Mage's Guild, make sure you get Persuasive Will, and then on Undaunted, make sure you get these 2 here. Alliance War, Assault, if you don't have the assault skills, this build does work in PvP. Just like any other PvP build, it works in PvP, but it's more of a tankier build. So it's one that you want to use when you're assaulting a keep or something, or you're trying to grab like an outpost, like not an outpost, but like a farm or a mine or something like that. You can use it to do that, and you'll be fine. Like you can solo those things with this build because you have that much capability to do it. It's a solo build. It's made to do that. So we are Wood Elf. Make sure you get all the racial passives. And then down here, a lot of people ask me, do you get these? Yes. Medicinal use and provisioning, you want these on this build. On any solo build, you want this stuff. Just like you do for playing a dungeon and stuff. Now, it's going to take you a while to get all these things unlocked. If you're a new character coming in the game, you want a solo build. It's going to take you a while to get on this unlocked, especially your dungeon stuff. The best thing to do with the dungeon is play this as a tank. Run Sword and Shield, play it as a tank, and the way you run it is you run Puncture, morphed into Pierce Armor, and you run that where Brawler is. And then you run Low Slash, where this is. Don't worry about a damage shield, you already got one. And you can drop Repentance for the defensive posture until you can get Undaunted done. Once you get your Undaunted maxed out, drop the Sword and Shield, go to two-handed, because you can respect your skill points. Go to two-handed, stay with two-handed the rest of the time. But make sure you level two-handed and bow. Like, from the beginning. When you get to max level, then switch to Sword and Shield, unlock Low Slash, Puncture, and Defensive Posture. It won't take you long. Once you have those 3, you can unlock the passives down here as you progress through dungeons. So you don't really need a lot of these to be successful at dungeon runs, especially when you're playing like the normal dungeons, like normal Path 1 dungeons. And you can get enough Undaunted if you play through all the normal Path 1 dungeons and all the normal Path 2 dungeons and all the normal DLC dungeons. Up to before Dragon Bone's really, like all the way up to Horns of the Reach. If you play through all those dungeons on normal as a tank, you can be fine. Alright, so moving on to the skills themselves. We are running Brawler as our main, like on our main bar, for the damage shield mostly and the damage output. Now I know a lot of people are just looking at this going, well, how's that damage output any good? Well, it's because you have Rally. And with Rally, that goes up to 4,155 and almost 7,000 bleed damage. Now that bleed damage isn't a whole lot, but you know what? It works out in the end. Next up, we have Rally. This is a great buff to weapon damage. It's also a really good heal. Why did you do that? It's also a really good heal over time. As you can see, it heals for 8,000 health every 2 seconds, and then an additional 8,924 when Rally expires. But the final heal can be increased by up to 564%. So it can give you a massive heal. Now, if I do over it now, you're going to see that health, additional health, dropped a lot. From 8,000 to 1,245, and that's because when Rally is active, it gives you the greater heal. So now it's showing 3,239, but it does give you a greater heal, and then when it ends, it's huge. And it changes because it's showing you the full amount of the heal that you're going to get. Now remember, you also can critical heal that. So, and that's 9k almost. So 9,000 point heal, and then you can crit heal with it. Next up, we have Blazing Shield. Blazing Shield is an amazing damage shield. Now, it's a shield that's based on 36% of your max health. It is kind of small, guys, like out the door. As you can see, 9k. That's why we need Brawler, is to compensate for the lack, what we're lacking. So 9,000 is still pretty good. And if I go up here and I use Brawler, now it goes up to a 13k shield that I can use to mitigate damage with. So that's why we use Brawler in that, along with Rally. Next up, we have Repentance. Now, Repentance is a really good resource management skill. Gives you a good heal, gives you this, you know, like a good resource return, and good heal and good stamina return whenever there's corpses nearby. So if I use it like with that fox or the jackal, you can see I just healed myself and I got stamina back. And if I go over here and I kill these, I'm going to try and burn through some stamina here. But it didn't. But I can siphon off all three. So that's the reason why we have Repentance. Now, on to the next one. We have Expert Hunter. And Expert Hunter just is there for the crit. And like I showed you guys with the Aerobridge Spear, you can swap out to have biting jabs there, but you have to be resourceful and know when to use this and when not to, because you don't want to burn through too many resources, and this will make you burn through resources like crazy. So you can swap this out for Bone Shield, but you have to do this: heavy attack, apply binding jabs, heavy attack, Bone Shield, heavy attack, and then whatever other ability you're using there. So you can, like I said, you can change things around if you want to. Alright, next up, Repentance, like I said, and then Evil Hunter, and then Flawless Dawnbreaker. This is great because this, while slotted, you get 5% weapon damage, but it's also one of the most powerful AoE damage abilities that you can get as a stamina DPS. It is literally one of the best, like, conal AoE damage things, because it does reach out 10 meters in front of you, and anything within that cone, and it's a 90-degree cone, from where you hit going out 10 meters can take this damage. Will get hit by that 9,000 something, and then the damage over time. So it's really powerful, and when you're buffed up, it goes up even more. The more weapon damage you have, the more powerful this is. That's why it works really good on a Templar, because they get 6% more weapon damage along with the 5%, making 11%. And since I have 2 Fighters Guild skills slotted, I get another 6% weapon damage. So right there, I have almost 20% weapon damage. I have 17% on top of the 20% from here. So I get a lot of weapon damage for being a Templar. And it makes these abilities work really good. My light and heavy attacks hit for really high amounts, especially for wearing kvetches. Alright, moving on to the back bar. On the back bar, we are running Venom Arrow for a dot. It does damage up front and then damage over time. But we're also using it to set enemies off balance, stunning them, and then interrupting them. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why this is really important to this build. And I'll get to it when we get to CP. Next up, we have Aerobridge. Launch a multitude of arrows into the sky to rain down, dealing X amount of damage, physical damage to enemies in the target area every 0.5 seconds for 8 seconds. So really good ability. Like you said, you can use a Maelstrom bow, which is going to increase the damage of this, or you can take the other one, the Master bow, and still get decent amount of damage from this. Next up, we have Resolving Vigor. This is a great heal for you. And if you're in small group play, like in a dungeon or something, or a trial, or not trial, but like in a dungeon, this really helps your group with survivability. So, next up, we are running Restoring Focus. This gives us Major Resort and Major Resolve and Major Ward, increasing physical and spell resistance by 5,280. It also grants us Minor Vitality and Minor Protection, increasing our healing received by 8% and reducing our damage taken by 8%. That's really important. The mitigation, because you are playing solo. Next up, we have Evil Hunter again, increasing our crit chance, and Flawless Dawnbreaker again. Now, the reason we have Flawless Dawnbreaker again is because when you look at this, 2120, 2396. Now, if I buff up, 2,805, 2,482. You want to keep that damage as high as possible on that back bar, especially when you're soloing. When you're not soloing and you're playing in a group, let's say in a dungeon, and you do want to tank, you can do this. And it's really simple, guys. You do this, you get rid of Dawnbreaker, and if you have the ability, there you go. Now you can tank and still be, you know, an effective tank, even in normal dungeons. And I will say this, most vet dungeons, all path 1, path 2, you can tank with this. Those are easy. DLC dungeons are a different story. On vet mode, most of them are going to be pretty hard for you because you just don't have the tools necessary to mitigate. But you can tank White Gold Tower. You can tank Imperial City Prison. Imperial City Prison might be a little difficult at times, but you can still tank it. And you can tank Cradle of Shadows and Ruins of Mazatoon pretty easily if you know the build really well. Now, moving on to the last two from Horns of the Reach, and we're not talking Dragon Bones, because in Dragon Bones, like, this build works in one dungeon but not the other. It works good in the I have to go to the names real quick, hold on. So it works really good in, not Falkreath, in Fang Lair with the dragon, but it doesn't work very good in Skullcaller Peak. And it's the same thing with like the other DLC dungeons. Like I could name them off, especially with the two new ones here. Bloodroot Forge, the build works great. Falkreath Hold, not so much. And same thing goes here. Not so much in Imperial City Prison, but it can be done. And then here, not, you know, it's okay. And then of course when it comes to the other DLC dungeons, these two, Ruins of Mazatoon, it works good, but not so good in, or it works better in Cradle of Shadows than it does in Ruins of Mazatoon. Now you're going to say, how can it work better in Cradle of Shadows? Ruins of Mazatoon, you have to deal with Shuden. Shuden is a beast against damage shields. He just strips them because he has this poison dot. In this one, the only person you have to worry about is the final boss, Veladrith, and Veladrith isn't that hard. It's just knowing when to block and when to mitigate with damage shields. If you can do that, she's easy. She's cakewalk. And it's the final boss. I don't think Veladrith is the final boss. I think it's the spider is Veladrith, and the final boss is something else. Both of them are, like, most of the bosses in Cradle of Shadows are pretty easy compared to Mazatoon when it comes to two-handed tanking. So, like I said, this build is soloable, and it is also made for group play. Now, I'm going to set it back to solo play, and I want to show it in action, but I've been trying to debate on the boss, and I think I know which one I'm going to do it with now instead of using this boss here, because this boss is just really just cakewalk. I mean, anyone can tank. You can tank this with a mage and light, like a person in light armor with like 10k health, because that boss is just super easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to ride across the desert real quick to a different boss. Another one of my favorite bosses in I love Alec here for solo farming, guys, because I love fighting the bosses here, but it's always so crowded that it makes it hard to solo the bosses, so I don't spend a lot of time soloing the bosses here except for on PTS, which is funny. The places I love to solo bosses. I love to solo public dungeons and delves because I'm a big geek for farming, like gold. So a lot of these builds are made for that purpose. They're made to farm dungeons, you know, public dungeons, delves, world bosses, things like that. Not just for item drops to sell, but to also for the resource, you know, like getting gold and things like that. So, like, usually I gold farm like crazy with this build. So, that Warden build I released yesterday, I farm the snot out of stuff with, because that's what I did with my Northern Wind on live, was I switched them over to that build because I needed gold, and they just made it really easy for that. So the way this build works, start with rally, swap bars, drop your AoEs like this, and kill the little ones. These little buggers can really be a pain in this fight, so... Now, you do a lot of blocking. I'm not going to lie. You will do a lot of blocking with this build. That's why sometimes playing solo with sword and shield is really good. So, I'm just saying, like, soloing with sword and shield can be really good with this build. I don't know why I keep hitting repentance. And the reason I use Aerobridge over, whatchamacallit, Endless Hail is because Aerobridge reaches a greater area than the other one, so... This boss just takes forever because of all the ground digging it does. I could have went and fought any of the giants and stuff like that in the desert, but... Oops. Double activated. Oh no! God! You turd. Stand still. Oh, come on, dude. You can die today. Sometime. Okay, I'm just gonna run away, guys, because I'll be here all day. Like, and I don't want to make the video that long. I don't want to torture you guys that bad. But yeah, you guys could see, like, that boss isn't too bad. There's a lot of bosses in the game that aren't too bad. Like, world bosses that you can solo pretty easy. Some that can be a pain. So, but that one's not too bad. That one's actually quite simple. So... Run home to mama. But yeah, that's pretty much the build in a nutshell. Showing it in action, showing you guys how it can work. It is really powerful. It is probably the second powerful solo build I have besides the Warden. Now, the Warden does work really good. It's just yesterday I was a little off my game when I was full soloing that boss. I solo that Werewolf all the time normally, and along with pretty much every world boss in the game besides... a few of the DLC bosses, because there is a few that I do have some trouble with, like, and I'm not going to say DLC, but like Morrowind bosses, a couple of them I can solo with this build. The Orsinian bosses, there's only a few I can solo. The rest I need I'll need a group for. The Craglorn bosses, I can solo most of them as long as they're the ring, the big stone circle things. Or even those, those groups of mobs that spawn here. And this build is great for Craglorn farming. Just letting you know. This one, the Warden, really both of them are really good for soloing this. The other builds I haven't really like soloed a lot of different things with. Like I tested them soloing a few dungeons, like public dungeons, normal dungeons, a few vet dungeons. things like that. But my Warden in this one I play the most, so that's why I released them first. So to give you guys a heads up what's coming tomorrow, be excited. Tomorrow's the Dragon Knight, and it's Magicka based. So tomorrow's build is pretty cool. I like it. I actually play this one quite a bit as well, or I did for a while there on live, because I was doing a lot of gold farming, and I'd get bored with farming with this character, so I'd go play my Warden, or I'd go play my DK, or I'd go play my Nightblade, or I'd go play whatever class I felt like playing that day. That's what I'd go play, and I'd farm with it. So but now I'm to the point where I have like an off switch. I just turn my brain off and go jello, what I call mindless farming, and I just farm for hours. I spend a whole day, like all day, in a public dungeon, so I can spend 8 hours in one. But yeah, that's what these builds are made for, just to farm gold, farm resources, farm you know, gear sets, things like that. So that's it for the Knight, or the Lord Knight build. It's a Templar solo build. I hope you guys like it. If you guys do, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, or just other videos by me, please hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.